ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today. I'd like to talk about shooting long range, right? So for competition, just doing it for fun, hunting, whatever, I want to give you some tips and some tricks for my intents and purposes. To me, long range is 300 to 500 yards, only simply because that's all the distance I have to shoot at my local range. Okay. But everything that I'm going to tell you today will apply to basically any distance. Okay. So what is the rifle that I personally have chosen? As you saw in the beginning of the video, this is it. This is a Marlin Model 25MN M22 Magnum. And this is what I shoot 300 to 500 yards. I'll mostly at 3, but I have, when I get a chance, I'll take it on out to 5. Actually, it's 500 meters. Okay. The main range that I shoot at is 300 yards. The long distance range, I don't know why they did this, but they did that one in meters, and it's 500 meters. Okay. So that is what I'm, shooting with this bolt action 22 mag. My setup here is basically a stock 22 Magnum Marlin made in 1989. Got Tasco 4-14 by 40 on it. And it came with that. And it's sufficient for what I need to do. And that's it. It's a factory rifle. The trigger, I've done a tiny bit of work on. I've replaced the spring to make it a little bit lighter. All right. Because the trigger pull on this thing was registering at about 8.5 pounds, and that just won't do. Okay. With the new spring that I put into it, it brought it down to about 3 pounds. I don't want a trigger that's so super light that it becomes dangerous. So I think 3 pounds, maybe 2, would be like that comfort zone for me and where I'm good. Okay. So let's talk about this. Like, you want to get into long range shooting. So the first thing you got to do is you have to pick a caliber that's going to fit your needs. For me, I chose 22 Magnum. Now, I've been doing this for a while. A very common caliber for this is 308 Winchester. You really can't go wrong with it. All right. In a competition setting, I would definitely say 308. Hunting, you could get away with like a 224 Valkyrie or a 223 5.56, depending upon what it is you're hunting. Okay. But you really want to stay, if you're going to stay in like the 22 cal varieties and 25 cal varieties, you want to stay on the heavier side, not the heaviest side, but the heavier side with your projectiles. Okay. So like with this, I shoot a 45 grain Winchester Dynapoint. I'll also shoot a 50 grain CCI, just round nose target round with it. And that works out for me. All right. Again, I wouldn't recommend 22 Magnum as your first gun to do this. All right, because there's extra challenges that come in with this, battling wind and things like that. And going with a 308, battling the wind the wind is your nemesis. Okay, it is your arch nemesis. And 308 does a really good job of fighting wind and resisting wind. It's a fast-moving projectile, and it's a heavier projectile, anywhere from 150 to 180 grains. Okay, so that's why a lot of people choose it. Plus, there's just a lot of different, platforms that you can use with it. There's a lot of different ammo choices. There's a lot of hand-loading recipes out there for it. And it's just a very versatile little round. So you want to choose, though, whatever caliber suits you, whatever it is. I suggest 308, but whatever you feel comfortable with, you do. Okay. The next thing is your gun, okay, your rifle. This is where a lot of people make a huge mistake. They start listening to what everybody else says about rifles. They start uh, basically becoming a member of the echo chamber, if you will. And so they think that you've got to spend an awful lot of money to get into this. And so what they do is they go out and they buy, a Bergara, or they go buy a Christensen, or a Seiko, or whatever the popular thing is in your area. Not knowing any better, and they just go buy it blindly. All right, don't go doing that. All right, your rifle, you need to look at it as an extension of you. It is another arm. All right, look at it like that. It is an organ on your body. It is an appendage, I should say, that can be removed from you. All right. So what I'm getting at is that rifle needs to fit you, and you want to settle on a rifle that has the most features that fits you the best. So your trigger, the stock, all right, the cheek weld, when you go in here, and you lay your head down and you go to look down. And this is something a lot of people don't do, mostly because when you're looking at a gun, a lot of gun stores will freak out. Point the barrel in a safe direction, of course, making sure it's unloaded. Don't point it at anybody. And just take the rifle and mount it up to your shoulder. Bring it up to where it's comfortable, and just close your eyes, okay? And lay your cheek down on here and get comfortable with it, okay? And then just open the one eye. All right, when you do that, you should be looking over the top of the receiver and everything up here. All right? You should not be staring at the back of the bolt. If you're staring at the back of the bolt, that means this part of the rifle and this angle and everything here is all wrong for you. And that rifle's really probably not the one you should be picking. Okay. I know someone's going to say, just go buy a stock. Well, you're trying to avoid that. You're trying to do this on a budget. All right? And you're trying to get the best that you can right there with the least amount of having to, modify it. So if you can get a rifle that's got a good stock that fits you well, you're ahead of the curve. All right? You don't have to go buy some fancy dancy, chassis and put it, it's fun to do, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to, because it fits. Okay. The trigger. If the place you're at, if they'll let you dry fire it, if it's a rim fire, don't dry fire it. But if it's not a rim fire, if they'll let you dry fire it and feel that trigger, do it. Feel that trigger. Okay. Hold it up like this. Look down the sights. Look down the barrel and pull that trigger. And what you want to pay attention to is the muzzle. And when you pull that trigger, you want to make sure the muzzle doesn't go or do any of this stuff or any of that. Okay. If it does, and that means it's too heavy for you. You should be able to hold this thing comfortably, like so. Keep your eye on the target and just pull that trigger back, and it click, and nothing move. Okay. Now, even a gun like a Savage Axis 2 has an adjustable trigger. So if you have an adjustable trigger on that gun, and it moves, well, that just means it's adjusted too heavy. Okay? And you can probably lighten it up to where it won't do it. But you want that trigger shoe and everything to feel comfortable. All right? You want it to be comfortable. You don't want it to feel odd to you, distract you. All right? So the rifle really needs to fit you. Let's move to the scope. All right? Now, there's a saying out there you'll hear a lot of people talk about. The scope should cost more than the rifle. I don't buy into that. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. It's not gospel. There's going to be people out there that disagree with me with that, and that's fine. It's not gospel. Okay? Your scope, the big thing about the scope is you want glass that's clear enough that at the distance you want to shoot, you're going to be able to see what it is you're looking at, all right, your target. You want to be able to see it. You want it to have magnification on it that is going to, magnify your target to a point to where you can, with good detail, zoom in on it, right? So clear glass, a good zoom. You don't want it to be super foggy, all right? This Tasco that's on here, this old Taiwanese Tasco from the 1980s, 414 by 40. It does have, when I'm aiming with it, it does have a slight bit of fog to it, I'll call it. It's just a little bit blurry, all right? It's good enough for what I'm trying to do. I do plan on changing it, all right? But if you're happy with it, you're happy with it. If it'll work, it'll work. The thing to also look at is the reticle. Now, this is a big deal, right? You need a reticle that you'll understand. And some folks are like, what do you mean, understand? It's a reticle. It's a crosshair. You put the thing in the middle and hit it. No. See, there's lots of different types of reticles. There's just a crosshair style reticle. There's a range-finding reticle. There's a MOA, or mil-dot reticle. I mean, and certain scopes are set up to be used with certain calibers, and that's how the dots are set up. So when you zero at a specific range, that it, as described by the scope manufacturer, then those dots will automatically be on. Right? You see that a lot in the AR world. Okay, the 223 and the 5.56. So you want something you can easily understand, and there's if you can understand multiple rings, go with that. Just understand your reticle and master your reticle. Okay. Zeroing. Use a precision zero. Okay. When you buy a scope, one of the things I like to do, and it helps me with gaining a precision zero, I like scopes that don't use a tool for the turret. Right? There's nothing that's more awkward feeling and pain in the butt than having this thing up here and you got to grab a screwdriver and do this number while you're looking through. It's a pain in the butt. All right, and you got to hold the screwdriver there in that thin little head. It's wiggling around and you're like, oh, it went too far. Oh, the screwdriver fell out. Oh, where was I? If you have a toolless turret, it's just pick it up, lay it down. Okay, click, 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 click. Okay. Good. All right. And bang, bang. Shoot your 3 shots. Okay, I'm on now. All right. So look for something with toolless turrets. Use a precision zero, which is different. You hear me say a loose zero and a precision zero. Okay. I usually say I got a loose zero. What that means is I'm in the bullseye, but I might be high on the bullseye. I might be low, a little bit left and high on the bullseye. I'm in the bullseye, but I ain't dead center. A precision zero, you're dead center with your group. Okay. You're also with your reticle, with your crosshairs. The other thing that you want to look for is use the thinnest crosshair that you can physically see. Don't just go, oh, it's too thick. If you can see it, but at the distance at which you're shooting at, let's say you're shooting at 1,000 yards. You don't want a crosshair or a reticle that's got big fat lines on it, especially if you're shooting at something maybe 10, 12 inches of diameter at those distances. Because what happens at those distances is that crosshair actually ultimately will cover up the entire target and you can't tell where you're aiming. So you want as thin crosshairs as you can physically see. You don't want them to be too thin, though. Because if you think they're going to be too thin, well, then you'll just sit there and stare at it and go, and you'll be straining to see the crosshairs. So the crosshairs really need to just jump at you when you go to see it. Okay, that's where stuff like the AOEG reticle has really kind of gained in popularity. Like stuff with like the Westlake 6024 by 50 that I have, which is a very affordable scope, like $60 brand new on eBay. Okay, it's got decent enough glass, 6024 by 50. Zoom and everything with a 50 millimeter objective lens, and it's tool-free turrets. Right. They're not marked though. which is kind of a pain in the butt, but you can add marks, right? That ain't a big deal. And I'll discuss that later on in another video. So that reticle, like I said, get one that you can understand, get one that you can see. All right. Your rings on your scope. People obsess over this, and there's some thinking out there that the more expensive the scope is, or more expensive the rings are, the better they are. It's a half-truth. Okay. Again, like with my Westlake 6 to 24 by 50, those are the factory Chinese aluminum rings. I did, however, go ahead and hone them. And yes, you can hone aluminum rings. All right. You just have to be very careful. Whatever rings you get, hone them. All right. Because I don't care if it's a cheapo set of Weaver rings from Walmart or a super expensive set of Leopold's or Vortex rings, or something from a gun shop. Hone them, because there's always high spots. The coating itself gets in there and it's uneven in places, and you're trying to do precision here. Okay, so hone them. You're going to want to invest in a hone. If you can't hone them, then just, when you go to torque your rings down to the scope, do your best to make sure it's as even as possible. All right. So if you have to go get an inch-pounds torque wrench, do it. Or if you're, the way I have always done it, and it works very good for me, is I draw everything down till it just touches. And it's nice and even. I look at the space on, in between the top of the ring and the bottom of the ring, if it's a split ring. And I make sure to keep that equal. Keep that space equal. And then as you tie all this down, tighten it down, you do quarter turn here, and do it in an X pattern. Okay, so, you do quarter turn on this one, come over across here, quarter turn on this one, quarter turn here, quarter turn there, quarter turn here, here, here. Just keep doing that, and watch them as those rings are coming down. All right, and if you start to see a little bit of more of a gap here than you see over here, loosen this side up a quarter turn and then bring this down another quarter turn. Okay, bring it down even. All right, when you mount it to the rifle, tighten it tight enough, which is about 16 inch-pounds. Right, tighten it down tight enough that it'll stay put, but don't over torque it. And also use Loctite, blue Loctite. All right, believe it or not, even a 22 like this will rattle stuff like this loose. So when you're mounting your scope, do it even. I mean, you don't have to completely, absolutely be a perfectionist about it, but just do a good job. All right. Where it really counts is once you have everything mounted and you're going to that zero and you're going for that precise zero. That's where you get, as they say, anal retentive. All right, and you get picky, because the closer you get that zero, the better off you are down range. Because as the bullet moves down range, if you're off a little bit, if you're off an eighth of an inch at, say, 50 yards, well, by the time you get to 300 yards, that eighth of an inch has turned into 8 inches. Okay, so you want it dead on, as dead on as you can get it. Okay, and a good quality scope will give that to you. So you got your rifle, you got your ammo, you've got your scope. It's all zeroed. Okay, you're ready to go shoot. There's a lot of videos on how to zero a rifle. It's real simple. You bring it up. You can bore sight your rifle. They make lasers and stuff for that. On a bolt action, what we have actually is an advantage to where we don't need that bore sighter. What we have here, and I'll kind of explain this and get this bolt out of here. It's a little tricky sometimes. Okay, is you set this up. You're going to want to get yourself a lead sled of some kind. You set this up in a lead sled, clamp it in there really good. All right, make sure it's straight. And then what you're going to do is adjust your lead sled. So when you look down from the back of your rifle, bolt removed, you're looking down the bore. You want the center of that target lined up with the center of your bore sight. That's why they call it bore sight. Once you have that, then you come up to your scope and you look to see if your reticle, your crosshairs, if those are on the center of the target as well. If they're not, adjust the scope so that they are on the center of the target as well. Congratulations, you just bore sighted your rifle. Okay, that'll put you on paper. Sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes it'll actually be all you need, depending upon the distance and what you're shooting and all that. Sometimes you can get lucky with that. All right. From there, once you have your range chose that you want to shoot at and everything, you're ready to take your shots. I do things a little differently, all right, depending upon what the rifle's going to be for. If my rifle's going to be for competition, I like a slightly warm barrel. If it's going to be specifically for hunting, I like an ice cold barrel when I'm doing my zeroing. Okay, and the reason I do that is because during competition, some of these competitions I've been in, your barrel doesn't have time to cool down to that room temperature, ambient temperature. All right. So what I will do, depending upon what I'm doing, like if it's for hunting, right there, boom, I'll do my 3-shot group, see where it's at, make my adjustment, but then I'll wait another 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll let that heat dissipate out of my barrel. And then I'll take 3 more shots and see where I'm at, and adjust to that, make my fine adjustments, wait another 10 or 15 minutes, then do those 3 shots. Okay, that's if I'm going to use it for hunting. If I'm using it for competition, then what I will do is I will take the 3 shots, adjust, immediately take the next 3 shots, adjust, and immediately take the next 3 shots again. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll start off with 6 shots just so I know I'm getting a little warm, then adjust, then I will repeat that process with maybe a little bit of cooling, but not much. Instead of going 10, 15, 20 minutes, 5, 6, okay? About the time it would take for you to run a circuit, okay, in the shooting. In my case, in my experience, I've actually had competitions where I've shot long range, where I shoot 3 shots, wait about 2 or 3 minutes, shoot 3 more, and it's just back and forth like that, right? Because there just weren't very many people at the competition that day, right? So I set my rifles up for competition to operate a little bit different on their zero than I do for hunting. Because, again, in hunting, you're sitting there in the tree, or you're blind or whatever, and the rifle is just at ambient temperature the whole time. You're going to take maybe 1 or 2 shots, and that's it. And maybe a 3rd shot if you have to, but really 1 or 2. And that's it. That's all you're going to be doing. You're not in a competitive environment where you're going to be shooting 20, 30 shots in that day. All right. So, however you intend that rifle to be used is how you go to do your zero. Okay? And you want to use that precise zero. Now, again, if you're doing this for competition, understand that your first few shots might be a little bit off when that barrel's cold. They shouldn't be, but they might be a little bit off. Okay? Normally for competitions, I've never been to a competition in long range where I'm not allowed to do this. You can go, and there's usually an hour or 2 before the competition where you can go practice. You use that point in time to warm that barrel up a little bit. Okay? That way when you go into competition, your barrel has a little bit of heat soaked in it. A lot of people obsess also about floating their barrel in the stock. That's up to you whether or not you want to do it. Can it make your rifle more accurate? Yes. Is it a guarantee? No. All right. The other thing, okay, you need to learn how to read a windsock or a flag, the different positions of a flag. Okay, I'll see if I can find an image of this, and I'll put it up here. But basically, when your flag's hanging straight up and down, that's no wind. And then when it's just kind of, I think it's like 3 to 5 knots of wind, and then if it's moving up a little more, that's even more and even more. And there's a wind speed that kind of goes along with this. Okay, learn how to read that. It'll also show you wind direction. This will lead me also into, if you are allowed to do this, like say you're just dorking around at the range. If you go watch my High Point 4595 video, you'll notice that on my little traffic cone, which I have right here, I had taped a balloon to this. That balloon can act as a windsock. It does a few different things. All right. You can download a ballistic calculator known as Straylock, right, and learn how to use it. They have instructionals on how to use it. You'll have to invest in a chronograph, all right? Know how fast it's going, the slope, and the wind speed, and barometric. You're going to learn how to do all that stuff and look it all up, all right? What the balloon does, and I learned this from Carl Lippard, all right? You've heard me mention him before. I believe he was a colonel in the U.S. Army. He currently holds the record for the longest shot in .45 caliber at 1,000 yards. That's why I did 1,000 yards with the 4595. Okay, because I wanted to see, well, how does it work with a rifle compared to a pistol? And the pistol he used was again the Lippard Leopard, which is a 1911 A2. Okay, it's used by the TSA. At least it was designed for the TSA. And it was designed with a sighting system that's good out to 600 yards. So, either way, the balloon, you want to figure out what your holdover is going to be. All right? How high do you have to hold over this target? When you figure that out, Straylock will tell you that. This is just a way to kind of get you going. You get you a string and you cut it that length, all right, and then you tie it to the balloon. You take the balloon and you tape it to the target, to the center of the target, okay? If you guys remember, I taped my balloon kind of high, all right? And if you look in the relationship to my tape, to where I actually hit, you'll see at 1,000 yards, it's close enough, okay? It'll be tighter for you at closer distances. But it'll get you in the ballpark of hitting the target. Okay? So that balloon goes up. And if there's wind, that balloon, you're going to kind of, you have 180 degrees here. 180 degree slope. You kind of think of it as a clock. And as that balloon, again, going back to the windsock, as that balloon blows one way or the other, what that balloon's telling you is how much windage is needed. When the balloon is sitting straight up and down, one of the things I like to do is I like to with my eyes, I like to look. What else would you use to look? I like to look at some kind of landmark in the area. Find something at about that height. A rock, a tree, a bush, something like that. Okay. And it's even better if it's of equal size to that balloon. You're going to use that as a mental image, and now the balloon is going to tell you what direction the wind's going. All right. So if I'll try my best to explain this the way I can. I really need a prop to do this, but okay. So I'm looking. Let's say I got to have 10-foot holdover, so I got to aim right here at the top of my finger. Okay. And then the wind comes along and blows this way over like that. That's the balloon. Right. Well, I know I need to be here. Well, this balloon just traveled so far this way. What I need to do is mirror this balloon. My middle finger's a balloon here. All right, mirror this image like this. So where I need to be aiming is right here, about right there. Okay, the balloon's basically pointing to where I need to aim at my given height, right, or my given holder. That's why I use that mental image or that landmark, because now all I got to do is go, okay, there's that landmark, go straight across from it until wherever this balloon is pointing to, go straight across from that, and boom, that's where I'm going to shoot at. And then the wind will take care of business from there. All right, and it'll for real long distances, it'll get you in the ballpark. Okay, and then you can make your finite adjustments from there. I learned that from Carl Lippard. Right, it's just using the balloon for Kentucky windage. And that's how I was able to pull off 1,000 yards with a 45-95. All right. Also, when you look at your target downrange, don't think in terms of three-dimensional. Think two-dimensional. Okay? Like it's on a flat piece of paper sitting in front of you. Think like that. So when someone says 40 inches of holdover, 30 inches right. Okay? Okay, so you have your target. Think of it like, I wish I had an actual target here. That's your bullseye, whatever it is you're trying to hit. Okay? So 30 inches of holdover, 40 inches right's about here. Okay, look at it like a piece of paper. If you're low and they're like you're about 30 feet low, well, to you it's going to look like it's closer to you at that point in time, and you're like, man, that's a lot more than 30 feet. That's probably like 100, 200 yards. But in a two-dimensional world, it's not. It's only 30 feet. It's a straight line down to it. Okay, you got to think like that, straight lines. All right. There are no curves in the art of riflemanship and aiming. It's really just a 2D world. It's not a 3D world. Okay. You're on basically a straight plane. There's an arc, of course, a trajectory to the bullet. But really look at it in a 2D plane. Okay, that's how you want to look at it. Once you do all of those things, you are going to be a long-range master. You've got it. There's all your basics for long range. Okay? You will have great success with all of that. And that's all things that I've learned on my own, and they really helped me. They really did. So, hopefully this helps somebody out there. Another thing, another tip, another trick I didn't get into back with the scope. So let's go back to that for just a split second. With your reticle, whatever you decide to zero at, let's say. And you don't have to zero at whatever the instructions for your scope say. Okay. Let's say your scope says zero at 50 yards, and then all these mil dots are going to be representative of all these different distances. And you're like, I don't want to zero at 50. I want to zero at 100. Do it. Zero at 100. But understand that those dots are going to change, and now what you're going to have to do, and you should be doing anyway, is you're going to have to make yourself a chart, and it's going to get laminated and taped right to the buttstock on your gun. It's going to be a cheater sheet, if you will, or just a cheat sheet. And what you're going to do is you're going to find certain points on the scope, dots, mil dots, lines, whatever they are, and you're zeroed at 100. So bring it in at 50, right? And then just shoot at a target at 50 yards. Start at the crosshairs, and then actually start dropping the crosshairs. And then when you know that you are on target at 50 yards and you see where to aim with the scope, what you do is on this little paper you can draw your reticle. You know, draw your circle with your little crosshair in it, and your little dots. Draw a line from each dot, and then you know, okay, this position right here, 50 yards. This position here, 100 yards. This position here, 250 yards. This position here, you know, this is where this is at, you know. Also on that cheat sheet, mark down what ammunition you've zeroed with, the grain of the bullet, the manufacturer, all that kind of stuff, okay? And then you just have a nice little cheat sheet there. You can go, okay, so, you know, you get your rangefinder out, and you're like, okay, that target is 210 yards away, and according to this cheat sheet, the third dot up is, you know, 215 yards, so I know to take that dot and hold it a little bit low on that target, all right? And I should be able to, or actually a little bit high on it. 215, okay, this says 215, that's 210. Yeah, hold it a little bit low on it, and you should hit it. You should make an impact, okay? That's how you had to think about that for a second. It's late at night here. So it gives you a cheat sheet, all right? And within a couple of shots, boom, you're on the target, all right? When you're doing that, shooting with steel makes it a whole hell of a lot easier than shooting with paper. Paper's for precision. Steel is for confirmation. Okay? So, I mean, if you double them up, that's even better. Right? But I didn't mention that before, and I meant to. Make a cheat sheet, put it on the gun, and make sure it's laminated, and keep it with you at all times. When you're, you know, competing or shooting or whatever. So hopefully these little tricks, tips, and this advice will help you guys in your long-range endeavors out there. I hope all of you are doing great. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Please let me know by giving me a thumbs up on it. That really does more for the channel than anything. And with that, I'm going to leave you with something. I'm going to leave you all for a split second here. I'm going to go political. I realized what a particular quote that's been thrown around in the political world recently actually means. And it's a quote by somebody that, well, may have just come into power. And that is, unburdened by that which was. That is a famous quote by Kamala Harris. And when she originally said that, it was, what the hell does that even mean? I think today, July 21st, 2024, we learned what she was saying 6 months ago when she started saying this corny quote. Unburdened by that which was means that something was burdened and it was unburdened. The burden was lifted. That, I think what she was telling us was that Joe Biden was about to get replaced. He was about to drop out. Today, he did. So, with that, guys, think about that. Let that marinate between your ears for a little bit. God bless you. God bless America. Take a kid fishing, take a kid shooting. And as usual, I will see you on the flip. God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye now. Have a good night.